Welcome back to the Toaru Rando, where I think 4 months after me finally editing OT20, rip to that project. But me, Kami, and Matrix have all read, well, again, Matrix not, but we've all read NT9, and we are here now to talk about it. And I am very excited to talk about NT9. It was amazing. I have the wheel spinning in the background, and will be spinning in the background until we actually reveal our next book. That way the suspense will always be forever behind us. So let's start with NT9. Who wants to go up first? Talk about NT9.
Okay, so general thoughts, since yes, expect me to only read half the volume or 75% of it moving forward. But general thoughts from what I read and the half that I read like 3 years ago, from what I remember. Really good volume. Peak of Kamachi, as everyone likes to say. Kamachi peaked all the NT9 elitists. I did read GT10 because I personally like GT10 more than NT9. I know, shots fired. Bedhead would disagree, but I clearly stated my case in the GT6 to 10 recording. So yes, this recording is immediately dated. Have fun, Bedhead. Editing Bedhead, I mean. Back on topic. Yes, overall ratings, let's spoil it. 10 out of 10. What do you guys say?
This is an easy 9.5 volume. I absolutely loved it. The only things that docked it down were Will's irregular speech pattern being the most convoluted Kamachi's done so far. And I think the end where I couldn't really visualize Otinus's like magic at the end. Other than that, what amazing volume.
Hey, Tommy?
10 out of 10. Absolute peak. I feel like
cinema.
Like the best Kamachi's done, and like I don't know. I feel like he's not really come close before or after.
Fair enough assessment. I think this is the perfect to actually dive into the volume. What do you guys say?
Yeah, I want to go to Kami and say that this is your second reread of NT9, right? What are you probably connected the most, and along with Matrix too, but like you said that you connected with NT9 on a really big level, and upon reading it for a second time, how'd you feel about that?
I think I actually read it like 5 times by this point.
Bruh. Well, damn.
Damn. Okay.
The first reread for this video, I would say like it kind of brought to me like a feeling of like empathy towards Athanas, that it just like I guess I didn't like even think to like really empathize with her that much when I first read it. But like no, rereading it, like it kind of makes her seem more human, and you know, like you see more of how do I explain? It like really puts into perspective like everything that you're seeing Toma go through, like it's like hinted at basically that's what Athanas has previously went through.
I really did like that detail.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I get the feeling of like if you like, you know how you watch a movie the second time and you notice things that really weren't there your first time watching. I feel like I get that a lot with this book. And there's also like things that I didn't really process before, like that I'm able to like really think about now. Like while I'm reading, I'm like no examples are coming to mind right now, but like you'll see what I mean like as we dive deeper into the volume.
With you on the part of trying to think of something to say and it just not come into your brain in the spur of the moment. Struggle with that a lot, even though I may not show it much. Let's just say overall, at least the parts that I did read, yeah, this is whole setup, especially the prologue. I mean, the prologue was just basically what was it? Like a summary of basically what happened in NT8, if I remember right. And this was just a recap of all the events that led up to it. Then Chapter 5 was the Dark World. One thing I have noticed in Quiet Machi volumes is the fact that his skill in terms of writing, what's it called? Dark, depressing realities is his best skill, I mean, writing-wise. Now, I don't know if I'm 100% sense here, but bear with me for a bit. So, entire execution of how he wrote the scene in the Black World, I think it's called. Something along those lines. I'm not really remembering stuff as well as I would like to, but let me just read my notes real quick to gather my thoughts, because right now it's kind of a mess. Yeah, so this, in the Dark World, this part alone nails the feeling of an utterly hopeless situation where you try to deny reality with every fiber of your being. And I can drop strong parallels to how real life throws absurd stuff at your face while not giving you time to accept the situation before you. And I think that's kind of my interpretation of all that scene, being the cruel ruthlessness of reality at times in our period of lives. This recording is probably going to hit the all-time record of Matrix messing up, but we'll just roll on with it. In my opinion, that might have been the strongest inspiration for Kamachi to kind of write out this whole volume. I think because in my opinion, that's kind of, from what I remember and from what I read, that's the strongest theme that permeates in the entire volume. But that's enough about me, Bedhead. You can...
My turn. Oh my gosh. You know what's crazy? Is that being the guy who read GT, and then we start with World War III right off the bat, and then we go to the world no longer existing. I'm just like, what's going on here? I don't know about this major plot coming up to here, and I'm opening this book with the world has been utterly, it just doesn't exist no more. So I am here going through this volume to what is essentially one of the best works of comics she has written. And me being so blind to this, I read it with eagerness and open eyes. And I have been shown a lot of great things in this volume. I absolutely loved it. And I know me and you have talked a while back, but there are so many things that I can compare NT9 to. And we discovered a lot of things in a past VC that I should probably say this now, that NT9 predates one of the most influential anime arcs that I like, which, to sound like a broken record, is Danmachi Season 3 with the Xenos arc. NT9 predates the Xenos arc, and it's really crazy how I guess Fujino Omori got inspiration probably from Toaru to write a 3-part story like this. And I really love like how you said, the empty feeling of a fear that shouldn't be like known, of the world ending in a dark world. The 3 versions of a world without Toma Kamajo, and then we get Toma talking to Will and then stealing himself versus Othiness. And then right at the end we get the biggest shift ever, that is essentially Toma standing up to the world and defending Othiness, which is the parallel to one of the worlds that was against him. It was just really, really well written. Even from a blind story perspective, such coming from me, I think this volume is a really good one and done of just continuing on to the next part of the arc, but this made the foundation of Toma standing up to Odinus at first, and then doing a 180 because at the end of the day, she is a girl that has been through something, and he will defend her against the world. And I'm just, God, it's so good. I love this volume so much.
This is kind of I would say, now, feel free to quote me on this, and I'm probably going to regret it in the future. I don't know, who knows, but this is the ultimatum of kind of everything coming together in Komachi's writing, because if you were like me, who read this like in May or June of 2021, just seeing kind of the things connect that I can't really recall at this specific instance from all the previous volumes, it's kind of like the feeling you get when the entire series and even the subplot of like spin-off series kind of comes to this grand arc where everything just connects. I think, in my opinion, Toaru was the first world, the universe that gave me that sort of feeling.
Right, I know what you're feeling.
Yeah, except for like, hey, I was a bit of an Avengers fanboy, so I guess Endgame would be my by technicality, first experience, because that came out in 2021. Wait, when did Endgame come out in?
2019.
Oh, yeah,
2019.
Came out in 2019. Yeah, 2019. Yeah, that was kind of the feeling that I got, but you know, much more pronounced because I've dedicated full 2 months to reading every volume out loud for 8 to 10 hours a day. Yeah, when you put that much time into it, and then it pays off, it was crazy. Enough rambling on my part, but to actually kind of get on my favorite parts of the volume, because I think these videos are better structured as not really talking about everything in the chronological order. I think it's just best as type of a general discussion podcast, you know? Just rant about your favorite part and be done with it, with an overall conclusion.
Oh yeah,
And
totally.
stuff that you want to point out.
I'm the type of person who will jump in at any point.
For some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason the prologue really stuck to me. And I mean, I only read like the first half of the volume, so it makes sense. And that's where I made the most of my notes. But another kind of point, I guess, is there exists many types of fears, and the fear of being alone in the world, where everyone you knew isn't alive anymore, in a world of literal nothingness, is one of the most extremes. Followed by, this is mental torture. Even criminals are not to be locked in solitary confinement, as it absolutely scars the mind, and in more serious cases, loss of one's sanity and being. Komachi's getting this fear across really well. And then in part 3, I commended Toma's resilience in spite of the situation, and his willingness to just absolutely throw himself in the sauce in the middle of the situation to do what he thinks is right for the people around him, and to save them from that situation. And that's it, kind of exactly what ended up happening. And of course, him just venting to the will of the Miska network being the first sort of instance of him venting his feelings, venting his true thoughts, I would say, on a subconscious level, recognizing them on a conscious level, and then venting it out to the will of the Miska network. Man, that shit was so peak. It was so peak that when I was reading it out loud at the time, I was crying and sobbing as if I was Toma myself and voice acting that entire speech.
Dude,
man, that was crazy. Probably one of my most, let's say, memorable, saddest scenes, for sure.
When he was crying and venting out, I didn't read it out loud, but I felt a lot of it. And partly into why I felt that so strongly is because, and this is where I'm going to make my overarching connections, where this volume reminds me a lot of the people who suffer the most through time loops. We have Toma Kamajo, in a different sense, this isn't time looping, but Toma Kamajo steals his mind through every death and remembers when fighting Otiness. That has to be so mentally taxing. Subaru Natsuki in ReZero has to go through the death and go back in time, horribly not even barely comprehending everything that's happened, and then he has to steal himself. That's really hard to do. And then we have Okabe Rintaro in Steins Gate, who at first tries every conceivable possible way to save Mayuri, and all these characters break down, and it's super, super sad to see. It's super humane to see, and I love the struggle, and when they finally release it out. I felt Toma so much in that scene. But even before, when I was on the edge of my bed, because I love reading laying down on my bed, when the page said he jumped, I'm like, no way he committed the action of jumping. And then his fall broke, and I'm like, what happened? What? And then we realized it's Will. I'm like, oh my gosh, this literally did not just happen. My heart skipped a beat, and I loved just that progression. And then we get to Toma. It was just amazing up to that point, because
that's kind of my same reaction on that part, because I think it was the Omega World, and maybe it was the start of part 2 or part 3. Yeah, it kind of hit hard when literally the starting text of the part said, how would he go about killing himself? That's one of the minor things that hit writing, and then of course the jump, and the entire fact of Toma being so useless in the world, because it's effectively an entire deconstruction of his character, and
well done
what his character is. So well executed, my goodness. And then the parallels between Toma and Alphanus coming up, as you stated earlier. Alphanus is just, as you stated earlier, Bedhead, about Alphanus. I'm confusing my friends there. Actually, a question. I think this is going to be the most interesting option, since we have kind of glazed all the main points that we wanted to glaze, and of course,
I have not actually.
All three of us could rant down about the volume. Of course.
I have so much more to say.
Just as like a... Of course, you do. But I just mean as like a kind of interesting discussion point. What would you guys personally say was the weakest part of this volume compared to everything else, every other chapter or every other part? Or can you think of something that you would call, quote-unquote, the weakest part of this volume, surrounding everything else that goes on in it?
I don't know. Maybe I would have liked...
Definitely.
Sorry. You go first, Kami.
I think they could have maybe dove deeper into Toma's psyche and like how everything affected him, and I guess how everything ends up affecting him long term. Because like
oh yeah,
this isn't about the volume, like this is about the later volumes, but you don't really see much of it. Like it's not really a lasting sort of thing. Like you would think, like, because of everything Toma was put through in this volume, that it would like stay with him more, if that makes sense.
I feel you.
Like the memories of, all the different phases.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like Toma kind of just ends up walking it off like nothing later on.
I agree with you there wholeheartedly. But the thing is, and this is the same thing that was pointed as a criticism of NT9 and the stuff that Toma went through in the original drinking game that and this point was raised by, of course, Jagwit and Healthcare. But in kind of like a defense of Toma, I would say, and more of just like, I'm just gonna try to explain my reasoning of how I see these things. Me and Bedhead did have like a private VC conversation about it. I don't remember most of it, but the main point was kind of, it's the how trauma like this affects you and the circumstances surrounding it are very different to the time loop that Subaru was going through. So kind of like a very extremely delayed response to that point of criticism. And not really that comparable, even though on the surface they may seem to be. And to just get, this is going to take me a bit to like make my point because I don't know how to articulate my point, but I think there's a lot to be said about trauma and how it ends up affecting people, because there's different types of trauma and everybody doesn't deal with them the same way, right? So Toma's whole thing of dealing with it was, my counterpoint kind of to that point is, well, the point is to show how much this entire trauma affected. We should have seen like more of a lasting impact because of all the stuff that he went through in countless Office's world. But to that I say, well, didn't he, Toma himself, just at the right end of the volume, forgive Office for all the things she had done to him, and then challenge the real world so that he could protect the smile of the girl behind him? The same girl that put him through billions and billions of deaths and suffering, as to how the volume states it. So just the fact that he was able to forgive his tormentor, I kind of find it like it lessens the impact of the trauma, but when it really shouldn't. But that's just how psychology works, because if someone did some bad things to you, of course you're not going to forgive them, right? And to be able to forgive them is you have made peace with the fact that you have gone through this suffering. So it wouldn't really affect you in the same way. I know this entire point, my entire articulation of this point just sounds like an absolute dumpster fire, but I think you may know what I'm trying to get at, right? Or am I sounding like a madman right now?
I kind of get it. When I think about it, like, Toma isn't really the kind of person who, like, he'll say like, you know, such misfortune, and he'll complain like anybody else. But
Yeah.
he kind of is like more of the stoic type, like, or at least like he appears to be that way in NT9. And they even like, I like how they basically in his fight with Athanas, where he's like, it's saying like he's like dying, and then like he comes back, and then he like continues what he's saying. Every time he's like having like a dialogue with Athanas, it's like cut off by his repeated deaths, you know. But like, it's not like it's not affecting him after he dies, like as he dies. Or they say Toma forces the memory down of his death, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that was pretty fucking. I thought that was pretty badass, you know.
Now that you pointed out, and now that I remember that part, yeah, that's just an average Toma Giga Chat moment.
Yeah.
And he's really just an ordinary high school boy you can find anywhere.
Yeah, that's the one thing that Toma would like to gaslight himself and the audience. Please continue, Kami, what you wanted to say.
My brain is buffering.
It's fine. Then we'll move on to Bedhead. Continuing with the earlier point of what was the weakest point part of this volume.
Honestly, you already mentioned our VC, but I'll probably just go back to it a little bit. But I would have probably liked to spend a little more time, probably in just any of the worlds. Probably with more in the first one, Alpha, where Odinus just changed like one fact of perspective on everyone, and then they turned against Toma, just to see. They want him to go out more and see more of the changes. That's
Fair
probably
enough.
it.
That's
But and just to bring back that VC conversation, I remember asking you that I know he dies a lot to Othinus, and in GT6, Toma, that's a volume where Toma dies a lot and then it gets brought back to life. I asked you, why doesn't he why doesn't Kamachi or Toma even subconsciously make a nod to NT9? I feel like that would be super cool. And then I thought back of the drinking game video where Healthcare and Jag said one of those two said that Kamachi says that he just forgot, and I'm like, how could he forget? It just made me think about that. That's a really nice connect to Toma dying a lot here, Toma dying a lot there. Some sort of even author's connection somewhere would have been neat. Because dying a lot really fucking sucks. Much more in point to ReZero.
true, of course. Now, I don't know if this is just my memory acting up, but I feel like for some reason that there was a nod somewhere in GT, probably in one of the later volumes. But this could also be my wishful thinking. I don't remember as much as I would like about GT volumes. So take this with a grain of salt, but it also kind of comes back to my whole of you forgave the tormentor that tormented you, so the impact of the trauma would not be as strong as people would hope it would be, especially after the stuff that he went through. It's kind of weird how a human mind deals with trauma and the psychology behind that. But this is just me blabbling on from what is a dumpster fire articulation of a point that I think makes sense, so who am I to know? But I do think I agree with you there, Bedhead, that I would have liked to see some of the other worlds of more, but for the purposes of the volume and it being really short, actually,
I know, right?
NT9 is among one of the shortest volumes in the entirety of all the mainline index novels, surprisingly enough.
I read it super quick too, which is surprising even for me.
Yeah. I felt like the volume established what it wanted to do in terms of just showing the types of torment that Othinus was trying to break Toma in. So I can understand that part. But for my criticism of what's the weakest part of all this, honestly, I think it's just most points. I would have liked to see some of the more variety of the deaths and one or two more worlds, and I would have liked if the volume was longer, but the fact that it accomplished everything it wanted to and still is as peak as it is, despite being short, that's a great benefit to the volume, and that would be a benefit for a lot of people to kind of get that experience in a short volume.
But
So can't fault that too much.
What if the short volume is like a symbol representing how Kamachi wanted to write the different world versions short, and then keep, like you said, everything it wanted in this shorter volume for probably the bigger point of 10? When it's Toma against the world, the bigger world, instead of the different perspective, like instead of deconstructing Toma's world, which to Otinus is rather small. He's a human. He's like an ant. He's super small. But then he breaks that and goes into Otinus's world, saving her in this reversal of the Alpha world. So maybe that's what it wanted to do. And I respect that.
Now that I think about that point, you know what? Fair enough, because not saying anything about NT9, but you may be onto something. But anyways,
We'll have to
ignore the
find out in
background
10.
noise.
But I kind of want to dive into the worlds now, because from the blind perspective of me, just jumping into peak territory, probably scaring the Toaru fan base half to death, I really liked,
Yeah.
as we've been saying, this deconstruction of Kamajo Toma. Version Alpha is a world where Odinus changed one key fact, the perspective of Kamajo Toma, and now it's the world against him. You know, Ogame Pierce fought Kamajo Toma. Fukuyose stabbed him, and Komoe wants to. Oh god, jump scares everywhere. But it was super cool seeing how Odinus probably changed something super little or super drastic, and not knowing makes it super good. I don't think I want to be told, and that's okay. But this fact, just changing the perspective of him, truly scared me. Please someone remind me what was version beta, because version omega is the one where it's the one where the other person so it's version for version beta the one
Version
where
beta is basic. Yeah.
the other person who's Kamajo
Toma
Toma
having
who's
an-
not Kamajo Toma.
Yeah, the basically point of being Arthur is trying to do the good old identity crisis on Toma.
Okay, yeah, that one was really good as well, because this dives into how even though the original Toma knows that's not Toma, it's showing Toma how replaceable he is. How at the end of the day, friends, people are connections, but you can be replaced as easily as a toy. And that really hurts Toma. It can hurt you. And that really does hit hard in the psyche. So seeing that, and it really did get me really good how the original, I think it was the original Kamajo Toma. Well, Kamajo Toma was in parentheses. And I'm like, oh god, that's really neat. And then it removed it when we finally got back to the original Kamajo Toma. And then version Omega, the perfect world without Kamajo Toma. I think it's the Index scene, seeing Index happy, seeing the world without any flaws, without Kamajo Toma. Because honestly, this series probably would not be if it wasn't Index landing on the balcony and the existence of Imagine Breaker in his right hand. So without all that, you know, in the bigger perspective of this volume was amazing to see. And it really probably tells the person, Kamajo Toma, us as a reader, that nothing would have happened if you weren't there. And that bigger picture even hit me hard. Because then what series would I not be enjoying probably without the misfortunes of Kamajo Toma? So what NT9's doing to me as a reader is, you know, understanding Toma, but also the scary realisms of just probably, you know, that life, us as a person, our importance. I don't know. It was really good. It hit me. And then Toma stealing himself up. He releases everything out into the world, and then he steals himself back up, and he continues doing so. And like I said, when Otinus returns back to the original world, it's now a flipped version of Alpha, because now the original point was to go after Otinus. And what does Toma do? Defender.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest, like, that's the most foolish thing you can do, bro. Which reminds me of Danmachi Zeno's arc. Bell stands up to all of Orario defending Mine. I love stories like these. NT9 being part 2 of a 3-part story is amazing. And I loved it.
Nothing has motivated me to try to like something about myself. I have an IRL best friend, okay? He's a up and coming musician. Like he's straight up raised in a family of musicians. His father is a Indian classical bamboo flautist, and he's also into modern music theory, stuff like that, classical music theory. Appreciates all kind of musics. That attitude has also rubbed off on me. I appreciate all kinds of music, and he's really into philosophy and studying different branches of it. Right? Nothing has made me more interested in trying to study philosophy and like morals and ethics than NT9, because before this I can't really find like a point of interest that kind of made me, hey, you know what? All these themes, all these philosophical things that are being hinted at, trying and being incorporated in this piece of fictional media, I kind of want to actually learn a bit about the real world discipline of the different branches and stuff like that, and ethics. So that's a little neat part that I want to jump into, like 5 to 6 years later down the line when I have enough time and I'm not really actively trying to pursue any one of my other interests. But that aside, I don't really have much else to say because here's the thing. If you're thinking that I'm going to read the next volume fully, nah, it's just a gag, man. I already read this volume. I already read everything index related up
Once and
until
that's it.
GT4. Yes, once and that's it. Now, every time a new volume comes up, I'm going to read the first half of that volume, stop, even if I could finish it, and then be on a podcast to talk about it in such a messy way because that's just what my persona and character has become.
That's
And I appreciate it.
horrible.
I embrace it.
Anything you need to add to my thing, Kami? I know I ranted a while, so anything you agree or disagree with what I've been saying?
I mean, definitely this volume, like if I'm being real, like it's been like a great source of catharsis reading it.
I didn't even realize that. Yeah, it kind of
Bas-
is, isn't it?
Yeah, and what you said about like I was thinking when you were talking about philosophy, like yeah, this volume does really make you think. Like it makes you think about yourself, makes you think about your own, mortality, morality,
Yeah.
like really all kinds of topics, like not just like heavy or sad or dark, but like abstract ones. Like they're taking this volume basically just takes this normal boy and just like puts him at the end of the world, and it's like it makes you think like how would I feel like being there,
Yep.
or maybe
Yeah,
some
for
people
sure.
feel like they've already been there. um Not to get too deep for me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I agree
I'm
with
sure
that.
like Kamachi, actually I don't think I imagine Kamachi doesn't really think too much when he writes these, but like about like the after effects. But I'm sure like a lot of people reading this, like reading NT9, they'll just like it'll speak to you,
Yeah, for sure.
I can't
I
imagine
think
there's anyone there who can read this and like walk away like getting nothing from it, you know what I'm saying?
If we do, we found a liar. There ain't no way.
Alright, so now to play the devil's role here, nah, people will still read the most philosophical, greatly executed writing there is in the series that they form their entire online identity around, and just call it Pete. Don't think about it too much. Read it once. This was 10 out of 10. Moving on.
But even they would have to have a reason for that
Nobly,
number of a rating.
every type of person exists, and there's always going to be a better person than the best person you know, and a worse person than the worst person you know. So that's where someone being that potentially that way, but most people will get something that they'll walk away with.
Yeah.
To add, I think the first point that I mentioned in this entire, like towards the start of the recording, being Hamachi has done a really good representation of the portrayal of the cruelness and ruthlessness of reality. That entire on how Kami put it, that just strengthens my belief that this was kind of his original inspiration for this entire volume, and then just including some more philosophical things into it as an add-on, rather than it being most of the focus, because the main focus, the core focus from what I could tell, was the cruel and ruthlessness of reality, and how you as a person would want to deal with it, or be inspired by Kamijo to deal with your own ruthless reality out into the real world. And I think that's the main point that Tamachi would, maybe the author, maybe or maybe not the author, would want you to walk away with. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Can I chime in?
Yeah, sure.
I just feel like you bring up points like that, don't really come to mind for me yet, but yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Like what you said about Toma, like how he's facing all this, like everything Authenus puts him through, but he still moves forward. Like he still has his eyes on bringing everything back to the way it was supposed to be, bringing back his friends. It's really telling that like Index ends up being, like, I guess, the ultimate driving force for him, like in the Omega world. Like that's basically what shuts him down, where he's like, you know what, maybe I gotta give up. But it's also poetic that like Misaka Imoto, or rather in this case Misaka Will, like she's the one who like kind of brings him back to his senses, you know what I mean?
No, I do. I find it very symbolic how it's 10,031, and I found that crazy. I had to reread that part. I'm like, wait, you're taking the form of 10,031, because that was the last clone who died before he found 32, and I'm like, oh, shit's crazy. It's really makes it influenced from
The
Sisters
fact that
Arc
he
even now.
It is crazy, the fact that Kamachi chose that particular clone. Yeah, he knows what he's doing. Any last points that we guys want to make, or are we done with it?
I think I'm good.
Yeah, personally, I'm also good, and that's just how it's gonna be. There's only read half the volume, and I'm gonna be forever a fraud in this podcast discussion series.
Kami?
Anything you want to say to me to end it off?
I feel like on a good day I probably would have had more to say, but I'm just kind of foggy and like disorganized.
Don't worry about it. That's the show for you.
Don't worry about it. It's unfiltered thoughts and some notes for preparation. That's it. I think, yeah, that's it. That's the end. And let's see
Hell
what
yeah.
the next volume is gonna be.
Are we ready to see the next book?
We are.
Yeah.
All right, let's count it down.
Let's see.
5,
I
4, 3, 2, 1. OT18? Which one's that one?
Oh my god.
Which one's OT18?
That's the end of the British royal family arc.
Are you kidding me?
Wait, let me check. Before that, let me check. Literally the later half of the British royal family arc.
Oh yeah, because volume 20 is Dragon.
You stupid.
Or volume 19 is Dragon. Oh shit. I was scared we were gonna hit NT18. I'm like, what?
Bro, I would have, legitimately, I would have lost my shit if that happened.
I was scared because with NT9 it was just so shocking. But hey, I am down to if revisit this one.
Yeah, same thing.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember it whatsoever.
Hey, that's what we're here for. We're gonna revisit it. I hardly remember this one too. Hell yeah, we got our next book, and I
It's gonna
can't
be a bit
wait.
confusing since we are gonna. I think this volume might be the one where it's gonna be a bit confusing because it relies on the setup of the start of the British royal family arc.
Perfect.
It should be a good volume nonetheless. But fair enough. I'm glad that all of you enjoyed this video so far. If you didn't, sorry to say it, but you still watched us, listened to us. Be sure to drop a like down below. Or if you have any thoughts that you want to share with the crew, everyone else, I'll be sure to convey that comment if you leave it nicely down below. I know this is kind of a very weird outro, but this is how I'm gonna do things. Be sure to check out all the socials in the description. Hopefully they are.
There will be.
It falls on Bedhead, so yes, as he said. And we will be back with
G first, then this one.
but anyways, see you on the next one, guys.
Thanks much. You guys will never guess where I just came back home from.
The convention?
Probably your last what's it called? Last performance?
I came back from the Minecraft movie.
Flint
Oh,
and
okay.
Steel.